reason why I felt it was important to start a Kimochi is that when I was a child growing up in Sacramento, I was very close to my grandparents who lived with us. So that is when I learned a little bit of Japanese and a lot of the cultural issues growing up with my grandparents. So when I came to San Francisco to start my career, there were needs here that I felt were something that we should address. And so that's when Steve and I talked about how can we address some of those needs.
Kimochi is a word in Japanese that's real yasashi, real simple, real babyish, the kind of simple word that even Japanese Americans would know, let alone the seniors. And I thought a real soft word like that, that denoted feelings or good feelings, was really a perfect word to kind of identify us to do this active work for the seniors. And at that time it was Issei's. So we called it Kimochi Incorporated, San Francisco Issei Project.
The way we started the organization was with all volunteers, and there were like 10 of us who would meet on a regular basis to talk about organizing it. And at that time, we were all very young, and we felt that if there's a need, then we should do something about it.
My attitude, and I read this with the 60s, was this was our time. And ain't no one gonna tell us differently. And with the understanding or armed with history, you know, what happened in camp, what happened with discrimination, what happened to our grandparents. You know, you make those kind of principal vows that we'll never go to camp or social justice will prevail. It's real interesting how you do that, but it's interesting how you do your interpretation of that. So for me, part of that was Kimochi Senior Center.
And how they reacted to our starting the organization was very skeptical, because they felt that we were a bunch of kids not knowing what we were doing, and you know, they just wanted to see if we were for real. Once we opened up our first site, which was the Kimochi Lounge in the Japanese Trade Center, they kept kind of walking by and kind of peeked in, but they didn't want to come in. And so we really had to build the rapport and the trust with them. And once we were able to do that, then it was all right, because then they knew that we were serious and that we were just not fly-by-night.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good, good.
I think the most proud I am of the organization is our ability to keep our ear to the community needs. We don't say the organization will decide what the needs are, but the people who are being served, the seniors, should decide what they need. They let us know what they need. They tell us what their needs are, and then we create those programs around the needs. So the first big program was our nutrition program back in 1974. At that time, we were actually a pilot program in the state of California to provide an ethnic meal. And we wanted to prove to the state that it's important for every ethnic senior group to have the food that they're used to. And it's very important as people get older to have that food that they're familiar with. After that, it was transportation. So we needed to get some vans. We needed to have drivers. Transportation is another way for people to go from point A to point B and to remain independent. Kimochi as an organization has always had the philosophy of trying to support seniors to be able to stay in their community, stay in their own homes as long as possible, and avoid institutionalization.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
an Army officer, they told me I wouldn't live past 30, but now I'm 90 years old, so I'm glad to have Kimochi home to take care of people like myself. They feed me, allow me to do my laundry, and give me the medicine that I need.
I'd recommend it. I think if you're asking for anything better than Kimochi, you better start looking, or they're going to run out of space.
Mrs. Yukiko Hamai is 102, and she's one of our centenarians. She's been living here at Kimochi Home for 5 years. One of her hobbies is flowers, so she has many flowers and plants in her room. And when she was a little girl, she remembered one day an elderly lady came up to her and gave her a flower. And ever since then, she's loved flowers. How many grandchildren do you have?
Grandchildren 5.
5, wow. You have great-grandchildren too?
3.
3. Mrs. Tameko Shijo is 107 years old and has lived here at Kimochi Home for 6 years. She seems to really enjoy it, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that she made the decision herself. It wasn't her family, it wasn't her relatives. She herself was in control of her own destiny. Well, I think I get emotional because it just reminds me of the reason why we started Kimochi. When we first started the organization, you know, we were kind of like the odd couple because I'm very conservative. He was very kind of a street guy and had long hair, a beard, wore sunglasses, and a lot of times people were afraid of him.
I always regard Sandy as the most important influence in Kimochi that was able to stabilize the organization through all of our developmental years, like the building of the Kimochi Home, the licensing of it, the operation phase of it.
Steve actually is the charisma and the soul of the organization, and he epitomizes the word Kimochi. Steve is a tall guy, he's a big guy, and yet he has, you know, he's like a little teddy bear. He has a heart of gold, and he's got the Kimochi, which is the feeling.
She is one of the strongest individuals that I know that is a really great advocate for seniors and particularly our individuals. Probably one of the smartest things I ever did in my life was to create an association and a friendship with Sandy because I knew that as long as she had a connection to this organization, we would probably be able to make it, or at least she would help guide us through. I was the talker, I was the one who went out and raised the money, I was the one that created as much as pizzazz as we could, but you had to have an anchor. And Sandy Mori was definitely the anchor for Kimochi.
I feel that any senior can get services from Kimochi. It doesn't have to be a particular nationality. We serve anybody in the neighborhood, and this neighborhood certainly is very diverse now. It's not all Japanese at all. Anybody who walks through our doors should be treated the same, with respect, with dignity, and with Kimochi.
The future is interesting because there is a discussion as to what our Japanese American community is going to look like. I hope that in terms of providing services for seniors, that we baby boomers are part of that, with our children looking for an organization like Kimochi to provide those kind of answers. I know that we've done some good things. I know we've changed people's lives or have affected it. I know that people have had a better look at life or the support of it in terms of our services. So I'm very proud of that.